Hello everyone, and welcome to today's session. On behalf of everyone at Rev.io, I'd like to thank you for joining us today. Before we begin the presentation, I would like to go over a few housekeeping items. First, audio will automatically come in through your computer speakers. However, if you're having trouble using your speakers or unhappy with the quality of the sound, you can also dial in via phone number and access code listed on the screen. A recorded version of this webinar will be emailed to you within 2 weeks. If you have any questions during the event, we encourage you to submit them using the GoToWebinar control panel. We'll be addressing questions live during our Q&A session at the end of the event. And lastly, we have the PowerPoint slides and several other handouts available for download through the control panel. We encourage you to check them out. For those of you just joining us, welcome. Today, Gina and the platform team will be providing us with a demo of Rev.io's REST API and developer portal. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce our speaker. Gina joined Rev.io's platform team in 2017. Before becoming a software engineer at Rev.io, Gina graduated as an electrical engineer from Georgia Tech and worked at NCR Corporation for nearly 7 years as a point-of-sale peripheral programmer and professional service.NET web application developer. Since joining the Rev.io team, Gina has played a significant role in our professional Women of Rev.io group as leading the Women in Technology's Job Shadow program at Rev.io and organizing networking events. Now, I'd like to turn it over to Gina.
Hello, I'm going to go over a quick overview on what we're going to discuss today. First, I'm going to give an introduction to make sure that we are all on the same page. And then we're going to go through some benefits of the REST API versus the SOAP API. We will then discuss the developer portal and the benefits there are for your developers. We also have a REST API demo that we are going to go through. And we will then talk about future enhancements and the accelerator program. First, let's take a poll. You should see a screen pop up on your screen, and you should answer who is currently using the API. All right, it looks like we have about 42% of the people who have joined who are currently using the API. Okay. Now let's move on to the introduction. What is an API? Well, it stands for Application Programming Interface. And what it is it's a set of clearly defined actions that allow authorized systems to access and interact with Rev.io's data without having to know Rev.io's data structure or even having access to our database. Why REST API? REST API is more robust and provides faster integrations, and we will go more into that and other benefits over the SOAP API later. API first architecture. We implemented this in order to provide reliable and consistent data. We actively use API calls throughout our systems to ensure that we don't have outdated methods and the same data is returned whether you're on Rev.io's UI or you're making a call through the API. All of these items provide improved integrations for our developers. As a reminder, if you have any questions as we go through this presentation, go to the control panel and submit them there. So some benefits of REST API over the SOAP API is that it uses standard HTTP methods, and that provides us more actions that we can use rather than the SOAP API, which has a set predetermined amount of methods that can be used. It also provides more data formats, so you can use XML, plain text, HTML, JSON, whereas SOAP only provides XML. This gives more flexibility to the developers and allows them to use whichever format they're currently using in other API calls. Some more benefits are that we use cache memory and the stateless client. And the benefits of that is that it allows us to have faster data access and also failure recovery is quicker. We also have an increased visibility and reliability from being able to do the API first architecture, as I mentioned, by using the methods within the platform and updating them as we make updates to Rev.io's UI. We're also concurrently making updates to the API because they're using the same calls. And again, all of these benefits lead to easier implementations by your developers. We've also developed a developer portal, which provides a lot of useful information to your developers. We have a frequently asked questions page, which provides developers with starting documentation and answers a lot of questions that they have when they first try to develop against our portal. We also have use cases that provide developers with inspiration on what can be done using our actions in the API. The portal is the centralized location you're going to want to go for documentation and resources to be able to find answers easier and without having to wait on a Rev.io developer for assistance. The portal has sample requests and responses to allow you to get started and integrating quicker with our API. We have an exploration and testing ability so that you can actually go in and run some test calls into our API and see what sample data would come back. So let's actually move over and take a quick look at our developer portal. So here's the portal. You can see that there are use cases that are on the screen. Again, the frequently asked questions. And like just getting started kind of gives you an overview of what our actions are and what you can see in the request as well as the response. So let me just review how you would actually test in the developer portal. You can see here, you're going to have to log in and you're going to use your username and password that is used in the Rev.io UI, the @ symbol, and then your client code. So in this case, I was using our demo site. On the left-hand side, you're going to see all the different languages that are available to be able to integrate into the API, and it provides you a sample code of what you would use in order to make that integration. And finally, you can see the parameters below, and you can easily just enter the parameters that you would like to try, enter in your login, hit go, and we'll actually walk through a couple of demo steps in just a minute that will show how this gets used. So I'm going to go through two demos. The first one is going to be a searching of the customer. We're going to go into the portal, search for customer 1012, and then go to Rev.io and search for that same customer. So you can see the same data is available in both instances. And then we're going to create a contact for a customer. And in that demo, I'm going to go to Rev.io first so you can see customer 1012, the contacts that are there, then move over to the API and make a call to create a new contact. And then we're going to go back over to Rev.io to verify the creation of that contact. So here we go. So you can see this is the API portal, the developer portal that we use. We're going to search for a customer. First, I'm going to log in. Again, it's your Rev.io login at your client code, and then the same password you would use to log in at Rev.io. And I'm only going to enter one parameter. So we're only going to look for a customer that has 1012. And on the left-hand side, again, you can see the sample code of what you would call in order to get the response. And there is the response. That's all of the data for customer 1012. Now we're going to move over to Rev.io and search for that same customer. Then you'll see that it has the same data returned. Okay, the next demo, we're going to create a contact. So I'm going to the contacts endpoint, and then we're going to go to Rev.io in order to verify that that customer only has 4 contacts. And as you can see, there are currently only 4 in the system. And now we're going to go back over to the API to look for the create contact action. And here you can see that there are actual required fields for this action. So I'm going to input a name as well as the customer ID. And then I'm going to log in again. Now, if you were doing the testing all at once, you would not have to continue to log in. This is simply just because of the way that I was doing the demo. I went out and then came back into the system, so I had to re-enter the login. And then you'll see there is the new contact, Gina Cologne. And we will go back now to Rev.io and refresh the page. And then you will see Gina Cologne has been added as a contact. Okay, so now we're going to discuss some future enhancements that we have planned for the API. We're going to include sparse field sets. And this is important because it'll only return certain data fields in an API response, which is useful if the entire resource is large or computationally expensive to process. For example, if you only need the customer's account number, name, and balance, we don't want to pull down the entire additional data in the customer resource as was done in the demo. We also want to include object expansion so that we can include many related resources in one response. For example, if you wanted information on a specific product as well as that product's provider, we could send you the product and provider resources at the same time. We will want to add complex filtering, so you can filter lots of data to find exactly what you need using multiple filtering operations, such as substring, between, greater than, less than, etc. And of course, if you have any suggestions for future enhancements, you can always submit them in Rev.io ideas using the category REST API. Let me talk to you about the Accelerator program. What it is early access to the API, where you can provide feedback to the developers and also get some support via the Zendesk. We will have a dedicated developers for the REST API Zendesk queue. We want clients, partners, and third parties to be a part of this. And if you want to be a part of it, you just contact your client success manager or email marketing@Rev.io. And we are currently taking submissions to be a part of the REST API Accelerator program.
Great. On behalf of the entire Rev.io team, I'd like to thank you all for joining us today, and thank you, Gina, for a fantastic presentation. Before we begin the Q&A portion of the presentation, I'd like to remind our audience to ask any questions that they have using the GoToWebinar control panel, and also remind you all that you will receive the full webinar recording via email within 2 weeks. If you submitted any questions during the presentation that did not get addressed during the live event, we'll be sure to follow up with you via email directly. So for the first question, I have, will there be sample code provided by your development team to help our developers?
Yes, there will be. On the developer portal, we will have sample requests and responses in order for the developers to integrate into our system easier.
Awesome. For another question I have, how does the API handle multiple calls on the same resource? As an example, what if a customer gets updated twice at the same time?
In that instance, the REST API has asynchronous calls and will be able to handle both updates without losing that information.
Okay, great. Here's another question for you. How do we report bugs in the API?
You report bugs by going into Zendesk on the support queue. There is a REST API queue that you would go into, and we have developers dedicated to answering those questions.
Okay, and for the next question I have here, are there any other authorization methods other than basic?
Yes, we offer both basic authentication and OAuth.
Fantastic. That wraps up our presentation for today. Again, I'd like to thank everyone for joining us. And thank you again, Gina, for a fantastic presentation. Have a great rest of your day.